I was facilitating a discussion about our relationship with money. I was just curious where people were with this at the time. We had 50 people in the room in 2016. We formed a circle and went around the room, each saying something about their relationship with money, and I realized that everyone in that room was afraid of money, from the 80-year-old who I know has millions of dollars to the 20-year-old who is already $20,000 in debt. And it was, to be honest, it irritated me. What kind of society requires everyone to participate in something that frightens them? This feels so familiar. People are not fully rational, and they make many decisions that, if they were to reflect on them, they would change. Without a doubt, people's major tendencies are to frame things very narrowly. They have a limited perspective on decision making. They frequently look at the problem at hand and treat it as if it were the only problem. It is preferable to consider problems as they will reoccur throughout your life. Then you consider the policy that you should implement for a class of difficult-to-solve problems. People frame things narrowly in the sense that they will save and borrow at the same time, rather than treating their entire portfolio of assets as a single entity. People would make better decisions if they could see things from a different perspective. So there you have it, 11 flaws in human decision making. It's referred to as narrow framing. First and foremost, I'd like to differentiate between independence and freedom. So financial freedom is analogous to mental freedom. Financial freedom is understanding that I am me, and there is an economy out there with which I have a relationship, but it does not control my life. You know, it's liberating my mind from the messages of consumer culture. Messages from the economy. The message is that a house is just a starting point. That's not my house. I could die in my own home. It's as if there are so many assumptions that drive us into wage slavery debt. And whether you are at the low or high end, if you are engaged in that anxious process of more, you are not free. So the first layer of financial independence I discuss is mental freedom, which is freeing your mind from thinking like you are sovereign. The economy comes second. I will move my sovereign self into the economy for my own purposes rather than being a slump in the economy is my mega boss. And, for some reason, my boss appears to be as big as the sky. So I'll just let my boss and the tax system run my life. And I'm just going to let this thing run over me. No. As a result, you are a sovereign being. So your own sovereignty is your first layer of financial independence. The second layer is getting out of debt. And for some, debt feels limitless. And the first step toward debt relief is to stop incurring debt. Many people have written to us about how they were able to pay off their debt in a couple of years, despite the fact that it was an impossible debt that was going to last forever. They would perish in debt. And once they see what the debt is doing to them in terms of actual opportunities, future opportunities in their lives, that's what we try to get people to make. So something in the future is more important than the immediate pleasure of purchasing another item that you will never use. And the third level is really to get those 6 months of savings in liquid assets, whether it's bank accounts, somewhere where you can actually realize that money within 24-48 hours, so that you have an emergency fund so that you don't fall back into debt. As soon as something goes wrong, you lose your job, and many people now believe that even their most important and significant jobs are in jeopardy. So you want to get out of the precarious zone, and part of getting out of that precarious zone is saving. Then, as time passes, you will notice that surplus savings can be invested in such a way that they generate an income. And, over time, if you become a systematic, if not obsessive, saver, and you can chart it, you can watch your passive income grow while knowing that the money is your life energy. You keep track of everything you buy, and if you don't want to keep a little notebook for each transaction, you can just use your debit card. I said debit, not credit. Use your debit card, and your bank will keep a complete record of all your monthly purchases. You look at your purchases, sort them into categories that apply to your lifestyle, and then you tell yourself the truth about whether spending your life energy in that way makes a difference. Certain types of decisions necessitate a large number of people. So many people have a significant advantage over those who do not understand compound interest, whether you're a credit card borrower or someone who was saving. People have a hazy understanding of compound interest, which is extremely harmful. So, first and foremost, you need to be numerous, as many people are, and then you need to frame things broadly, as it frequently goes with numeracy, but it's not quite the same thing. It is critical not to have overly emotional reactions to events. And what I mean is that most of us tend to respond to gains and to losses to changes in our lives. You're better off if you frame things broadly and believe you win a few, lose a few, and have very limited emotional response to small gains and to small losses. There are so many ways in which we project onto money the ability to not only make us happy, but to make us better or better than other people or safe or So maybe if we make more money, we'll be happier, but it turns out that the relationship is much more complicated than that. It should come as no surprise that money cannot buy happiness. We've heard that phrase a lot, but it doesn't help us understand what kind of spending will actually make us happy and what won't. So we've got a certain limited time on the planet, we're going to spend a third of it sleeping, another third commuting and showering and sitting at a desk and doing somebody else's bidding. That's not much of a life. So you believe I got a third? I have a third of my waking hours to myself as well. Do whatever I want, because who am I? So it's almost as if it sends it into an existential crisis. What exactly am I? What am I concerned about? What do I want my actions to achieve, and what do I want to learn? What am I attempting to comprehend? What do I feel, taste, and touch? What do I want out of what Mary Oliver refers to as my one wild and precious life? When we look at the data, we find that the most common category of items that people spend their money on is things for themselves. Of course, we must pay our rent or mortgage. We require a car, as well as food and clothing. However, it appears that people are spending an inordinate amount of money on themselves. And, from our perspective as psychologists, the percentage of money you spend on yourself is completely unrelated to how happy you are with your life. It does not make you sad. It's not as if buying a lot of stuff makes you unhappy, as we sometimes believe. It's just that no matter how much you appear to buy for yourself, nothing seems to happen once people begin to pay attention to the flow of money and stuff in their lives. In this way, their consumption naturally drops by about 20 to 25%, because that is the amount of unconsciousness in their spending. So when you become conscious, that falls away, and many people say they don't even remember what they used to spend their money on, they just say, "Surprise, I'm spending less, and I'm not sure how that happened. I simply paid attention. I just asked myself, is this purchase making me happy?" When you focus on other people, you sort of reverse the arrow from me to you. It appears that when people give to others, whether through charitable giving, treating a friend to lunch, or purchasing gifts for others, those actions of giving rather than keeping appear to be associated with greater happiness. However, the inverse of stuff for yourself is to consider changing. You can still spend on yourself, but switch from stuff to something else. And, on average, Research over the last decade has shown that when people buy experiences, they are happier than when they buy things for themselves. When we buy things for ourselves, we frequently end up alone with our purchases. Consider yourself on your phone, playing a video game, or doing something else. You're frequently alone with your belongings. In contrast, experiences. Yes, we do some experiences alone, but many experiences are social in nature, whether we go out to dinner, see a movie, or go on a hike, or whatever else it is. Now that we're with other people, it turns out that talking to them makes us happy. Even insignificant interactions with other people make us happier than sitting alone in a room. 80% of children enter college having never discussed money with their parents, where it comes from, how it's earned, how it's spent, or what debt is. You can't just throw your kids out into the world and expect them to succeed. So I went to whom I thought would be the most knowledgeable about this subject. Bankers for Warren Buffett. They advised the country's wealthiest families, and I assumed they must know more that could help my family, but it turns out that these wealthy families are making even more mistakes. And I left this conversation with a few takeaways. Takeaway number 1, show them the money. It is critical to discuss money with children at an age-appropriate level. But, as Buffett's banker told me, I spoke to the richest woman in America, and she said it's a burden if I tell my children how much money they have, and he said it's far more of a burden to burden them with ignorance than it is to burden them with the truth. Number 2 tries to limit the power of money. We have chores and allowance after all of this research in our home. We do not mix the two. Because if you don't, the kids will do the chores for the money. As a member of our family, you are entitled to an allowance. But, alas, someone has to put the dishes in the dishwasher, and someone has to make their bed. You're a member of the group. You must look after yourself. Finally, allow them to make mistakes. Buffett's banker chastised me when I told him that we were forcing our children to put their money into different pots, spend, save, give away, and so on. He stated that they should make their own decisions. And I pointed out, but what if they make a mistake? What if they want to purchase something but have spent all of their money on candy? What if they end up in a ditch? And his response was one of my favorite quotes from the book The Secrets of Happy Families. He stated that it is far better to make a mistake with a $6 allowance than with a $60,000 annual salary or a $6 million inheritance. The point is that when the kids are young and the stakes are low, they should be allowed to make their own mistakes. Then you arrive to pick them up. You don't want to get that call when they're 24 and suddenly they're in debt, have made poor decisions, and are in deep trouble. There are several approaches to market expansion. One is to export, and another is to educate your citizens to want more than they need, and then you have an infinite way to, an infinite market called the endless willingness of people to buy into the story of more is better and continue buying stuff. So that's the old roadmap: growth is good, more is better. The new roadmap says there's something called enough, and enough isn't so much like an oppressive ceiling that you know, okay, I've had enough, and I can't have any more. There aren't enough of these vibrant, vital places. What we teach is an awareness of the flow of money and stuff in your life in relation to your true happiness, sense of purpose, and values, and that your enough point is having everything you want to need to live a life you love and express yourself fully, with nothing in excess. This is not minimalism. It's not that less is more because more is sometimes more, but it's that sweet spot. It's the Goldilocks point, and enough for me is like one of the absolute fulcrums between the old roadmap for money and the new roadmap for money. Get smarter faster.